Welcome to the Resilient Vegan, Episode 3. So today I invite you to grab your coffee and settle in for this beautiful story called Breathing Through Family Dinners with Meat Lovers. Harold stood outside the familiar red brick house, anxiety gnawing at his insides. The evening sun cast long, foreboding shadows across the lawn, and the smell of roasted meat filled the air, intensifying his unease. He hesitated, gripping the plant-based casserole he had brought as his contribution, a dish that had become his shield against inevitable conversations he dreaded. It wasn't just the food that made him pause. It was the tension he felt creeping in. He could practically hear the barbs and laughter before he even stepped inside. Harold braced himself, remembering the friendly jabs about his lifestyle choices that he was certain awaited him. But tonight, he had resolved to try to remain positive. He would focus on the love that connected them all and breathe. 5 seconds in, and 5 seconds out. At 68, Harold had learned the necessity of setting intentions, especially in family gatherings where conflict could easily bubble to the surface. Resonance breathing had become his refuge, a tool to keep him grounded amid the storm of differing perspectives. But now, his heart was still pounding, even with the controlled breathing. No matter, tonight, he was determined to practice gratitude, despite the looming tension. With his heart pounding, he pushed the door open, instantly engulfed by the warm embrace of his daughter, Emily. Her beaming smile was a fleeting comfort in a house that buzzed with energy, moments teetering on the edge of his emotional frailty. "Dad, it's so good to see you," she exclaimed, her joy cutting through the static. "Good to see you too, sweetheart," he replied, forcing a smile as his heart raced. The din of excitement surrounded him. His grandchildren, Sarah and Ben, darted past, laughter mingling with the chatter of cooking utensils. In the kitchen, his son-in-law, Mark, carved into a massive roast, while Todd poured drinks, his teasing grin breaking at the corners. Harold's heart ached as he set his casserole on the counter, a solitary symbol of his values amidst a feast of contradictions. "Dad, we made sure to have some plant-based options for you," Emily offered, sensing the tension in the air and attempting to bridge the unspoken gap. "There's a salad and some grilled vegetables." "Thank you, Emily," he managed, his voice trembling with a mix of apprehension and trepidation. Yes, the gesture was sweet, but he could already hear the questions waiting to be asked, the subtle laughter waiting to rise. As dinner approached, they gathered around a large oak table. Harold nervously settled into his usual spot, his casserole a quiet protest beside the centerpiece roast. The usual banter began, and there it was, a sharp edge of Todd's voice cutting through the pretense. "So, Dad," Todd said with a playful grin, "still sticking to your plans, huh? Don't you miss a good steak?" Harold met his son's gaze, feeling tension gnawed in his stomach. He inhaled deeply, summoning his calm. "I found that what I eat helps me align with my values, Todd. Every meal has a story, right?" His voice trembled slightly as he emphasized their shared connection. "But what matters most now is that we're all together." Todd chuckled, clearly surprised by Harold's measured response. "Fair enough, Dad. I can respect a man who honors his values." For a moment, Harold felt a glimmer of hope that perhaps, just perhaps, they could navigate this gathering without conflict. The conversation flowed, and he focused on the warmth and the love surrounding him, the small acts of kindness from Emily, Mark's genuine interest in the garden, and Todd's playful nature that masked a sincere appreciation for family. As the meal progressed, Harold continued his resonance breathing, clinging to each inhale and exhale like a lifeline. He cherished the laughter, the stories, and the fragile memories building around them. But that tension lingered in the background, threatening to rise again. After dinner, as plates were cleared, Harold and Todd remained at the table, savoring a moment of calm with their coffee. Meanwhile, the rest of the family had retreated to the living room, their laughter echoing like distant music. Todd, have you ever wondered about where your food really comes from? Harold ventured, his heart racing as he treaded into deeper waters. Todd raised an eyebrow, caught off guard. What? What do you mean, Dad? I mean, how food travels from its origins to our plate, Harold replied, drawing on his breath practice for fortitude. I've been reflecting that a lot, and it's changed how I appreciate what I eat. Todd leaned back, contemplating. I haven't thought much about it, I just love a solid meal. Harold smiled kindly. That's perfectly fine, but sometimes understanding the journey can add significance to that meal. It's similar to knowing the story behind a family heirloom. It brings depth. Todd nodded slowly. I guess you're right. It's easy to take things for granted, especially things I've always known. Harold continued, his voice gentle but powerful. Exactly. I found that being more mindful of my food helps me feel more connected to myself and my values. It's a form of gratitude. Todd appeared thoughtful, stirring his coffee. I never really viewed it that way. It's easy to just eat without considering the reason behind it. Harold nodded, warmth in his gaze. The important thing is to remain open and curious. Todd smiled, a glimmer of admiration in his eyes. You've always excelled at that, Dad, staying calm and thinking things through. I could learn a lot from you. Harold chuckled softly. We learn from one another, Todd. That's what family is for. They joined the others in the living room for dessert and another coffee. Harold felt a deep sense of peace come over him. His family love was evident in every interaction, every thoughtful gesture. His breathing remained steady, helping him stay present, savoring each moment of connection. Before leaving, Harold pulled Emily aside. Thank you for tonight, Emily. You've raised a wonderful family, and I'm grateful to be part of it. Emily's eyes softened, and she squeezed him into her arms. We're grateful for you too, Dad. You've taught us so much about love and acceptance. Driving home, Harold reflected on the evening. He had stayed calm and intentional, focusing on gratitude and the shared love that defined his family. The bonds they shared were what mattered most. He realized that his quiet demeanor and the way he lived his values could be a form of activism in itself. By being a consistent, compassionate example, he was planting seeds of thought, encouraging others to reflect on their own choices. Harold believed that true change often starts not with confrontation, but with being the kind of person other people might aspire to emulate, showing that a different path is not only possible, but fulfilling. As he pulled into his driveway, Harold took one final slow breath, feeling content. He had navigated another family dinner with grace, despite his apprehensions, guided by the steady rhythm of his breath and the warmth of his heart. And in doing so, he had found the beauty in their togetherness. Again, thank you for joining me at The Resilient Vegan, and till the next story.